Good morning. Thank you all for coming so early. So I'm Edo van Dijk. I'm a designer. Who of you is a designer? Let me show some hands. About just less than half. Okay, I had expected more. Who works with an agency? Can be a design agency, can be any other agency. Okay. Who of you runs an agency? One hand? Just one? Oh, sorry. Yeah. 2, 3. Okay. All right. Okay. That gives me a bit of background, just a little bit. So I'm Edo van Dijk. Edo van Dijk is a very Dutch name. I am Dutch. I was born and raised in the eastern part of the Netherlands, very close to the German border. Van Dijk, a Dutch word, it means from the dike. So somewhere in the past, my ancestors were born on a dike. At least that's what I'm thinking. You know, if it weren't for dikes, this beautiful country of ours, which is almost like a designed, you know, it's a designed country, one of the most designed countries in the world. But without those dikes around it, about half of this country would not exist. So this is the biggest dike we have in the Netherlands. It sounds a bit strange, right? The biggest dike in the Netherlands. I can't help it. But it's up there, that red line. It was built by the Dutch somewhere in the 1930s. And this is what it looks like. You can drive your car over it. You can drive with the bicycle. It's about 30 odd kilometers long. And it keeps our feet dry, basically. And there's a lot of other dikes, because if we wouldn't have dikes, the Netherlands would look like this. This would be the border. This would be the coastline, which means that more than half of the Netherlands would have been drowned. So, as an introduction to survival, I thought, this is what the Dutch are about. We have survived many, many floods. We've survived our struggle against the water so far. And of course, we all know that the water level is rising. I think Trump wants to keep it as low as possible on his own, or something like that. But we had this huge flood in the Netherlands in 1953, which was a huge wake-up call for all of us. About 1,700 something people died overnight in this flood. It's because the dikes broke. The dikes were not high enough, they were not strong enough, they were not well maintained. So the Dutch designed and built new dikes, things like this and like this, to keep the water at bay. And today the Netherlands is a safe place, fortunately. And they're immense. There's a huge design going on. And the Netherlands is now exporting this water management knowledge around the world. So it's a fantastic source of creativity, this struggle against the water and managing to survive. But this is not a survival guide to the Dutch, or for the Dutch, or from the Dutch, right? So that's it. That's about the Dutch and about the Netherlands. Today is about how do you survive in a design surroundings. At least that's the topic that I chose for today. Whether you're a designer, whether you live in and work in a creative environment, whether you run a design agency. I happen to run an agency, and I've done that for quite some time. And that company is called Edenspiekermann. And today, Edenspiekermann has 5 offices. Here in Singapore is one of them. Globally, we're 116 people. Here in Singapore, we're just 5 next month, and slowly growing. We love to work together in teams. We work agile. We work in Scrum whenever we can, depending on the kind of projects. And these are just some images of our offices. This is in Germany. This is in the Netherlands. We always share lunches together. And of course, everyone has to obey the boss, right? How do you survive the boss? Well, I think that's an interesting topic as well. Our company is not run by a faceless network which has a listed company somewhere in the United States. Like many design agencies are part of a bigger network. We are a small company relative to many others internationally, and we're run by this group of partners. I'm one of them. It's a bit like Pentagram. So we have different partners in different countries who run local businesses, and our big inspirator and one of the initiators of our merger a few years back is Edenspiekermann, who's also the name giver of our company, Edenspiekermann. But the other part of Edenspiekermann, the not German part, Spiekermann, is called Eden, and was called Eden for quite some time. And this is a bit of the timeline of the Dutch part of the company, because a lot of people think, oh, Edenspiekermann is German, but in fact the Dutch part of Edenspiekermann is older than the German part. And this is a little bit of our journey through time. So we started back in 1956. It's a bit tiny up there, but this is a timeline that starts in 1956. And this one ends because this was printed in a book that we published in 2006. So this timeline ends in 2006, and of course it continued afterwards. But the interesting thing about this graphic is that you can see how our company has survived in the design world throughout the decades, you could say. Because every color line that you see here represents a certain profession within the design industry. So for instance, the blue one represents industrial design, and the green one represents architectural design, and the red one, graphic design, and the purple one or the magenta one, information design, etc. So every color represents a discipline within the design field. And the interesting thing about this graphic is that you see that things change, and things are constantly changing. We don't know today where we'll be as a design agency in 10 years from now. And it's probably the same for all of you, because our industry, our profession is changing, and it's changing a lot. Due to technology, due to internet, due to the way we work together today, which is very different from the way we work together and we used tools when I started in my profession, which was in 1987. And with those changes also come changes in how do you work together, how many people and how many disciplines do you need in your company to be able to do the things that your clients want you to do. So somewhere in the mid-60s, we were 5 people. By the end of the 60s, we were 10 people, 20, 30, 45, 80. And the highlight in only the Netherlands, I'm not talking about the other part in Germany, just the Netherlands, 100 people just 2 years before I became a partner in 1998. And then we had our first big moment of survival just 1 or 2 years after we became Eden, because the internet bubble burst. Some of you may remember 2001, more or less, 2000, 2001. The first big dot-com hype came to a big implosion, and a lot of design agencies that had grown very rapidly in those first years in the internet age died. They just disappeared. Fortunately, we were able to survive, but we had that discipline, the interaction design, in our company since 1991, 1992. So we were very early adopters. And partly that was also one of the reasons why we managed to survive. We were not focusing only on interaction design or on web design. It was one of the things that we did. But we did have to slim down over this period. One partner left. As you can see, every line represents also a partner that ran the business. And by 2004, I think 2005, we were already down to 80 people. And then slowly after that, we started growing again. In that process, there was an interesting phase for me personally as well, when I became partner and owner, when I bought shares in this company. And as you saw, the company was pretty big already back then. So it was almost 100 people. And I was 34 years old. My fellow partners, former bosses, thought I would qualify to become one of the partners and owners of the company. But they decided that I couldn't do that overnight. I had to do like a final exam for the whole company and for them that lasted 2 years. Now, looking back on that period, I should never have said yes to this, because it was horrible. It was really one of the, how do you say this in English? In Dutch, we have this wonderful word for it, which is louterend, and it means that I learned a lot, and I especially learned a lot about myself, about how I stood in the world, what was important for me and what not. I was in limbo between being an employee and being an owner, partner, boss. You know, what is, for heaven's sakes, what does it mean being a boss? I had no clue. So all these things happened over the course of about 1.5 years. And at the same time, I had to run my own team. I had to run my own clients. I had to show my fellow partners, owners of the company, that I could manage about €1 million of turnover per year, because that was the average that every partner had to bring in, etc., etc. So that was really tough. Somehow I survived, and I also have to thank my wife for that, because she was a very important support, a lifeline at home in that period. But I think I came out stronger. So it's, and I don't think I skipped one day, which means I was never ill. I may have been a little bit ill in my head, and thinking back, you know, why in hell did I do this? But because I thought, yeah, I can do this. Of course I can. It's not that simple. It's not that simple. And you have to learn a lot more about what it means running a business. So I often felt like this. So I'm a tiger, and they're shooting at me constantly from all angles. It's a mental battle, and it's. This is in one of my favorite museums. This is a piece of art which is owned, and it's not just one tiger, it's 5 or 6 of them, all with arrows, and they're hanging in all kinds of really weird positions in this huge space. This is in the Netherlands, in a museum called Kröller-Müller Museum, which is a horrible name, but that's just the name of the lady who set up this museum in the 1930s. And we were lucky enough to be able to do the corporate identity, the branding for this museum a few years back. It's one of the big projects that I'm very proud of. But this is how I felt. And then, again, many of you will remember, even though it was not a very big thing here in Asia, but in other parts of the world, especially in Europe and the United States, the credit crunch had the big crisis in 2008, had a huge impact on many industries. And one of the industries that was hit was, of course, the financial industry. And in 2008, our company was working, more than half of our turnover in 2008 was for financial clients. And another 1/3 of our turnover was for a large Dutch governmental organization called the Tax Administration, the Dutch tax authorities. And in early 2009, a few months after this credit crisis broke out, 2 of our main clients that were good for about, I would say, 35% of our turnover, said by the end of May, no, earlier, end of March that year, the rest of this year you will not have any business from us. So we knew then, in April 2009, and we had just merged with the German company by Edenspiekermann, we knew that we had work ahead of us, a lot of work. And by early 2010, we managed to save about €1 million, save €1 million, but we also made a loss of about the same amount. And when you lose €1 million in 1 year, it's really, really difficult to get back on your feet. So we had to find a way to do that. Unfortunately, the Dutch law and many laws give you the possibility, if you do your homework well, if you're very, very good in how you organize things and how you take care of business, how you take care of your employees, how you take care of your clients, to restart your business. and basically to get rid of your debts from the bank. So the bank was not happy, of course. They lost a lot of money. But hey, that's what banks are for, right? So this is a tweet from March 2010. Damn, Edenspiekermann failliet. And failliet is the Dutch word for bankrupt. So we went bankrupt. And that sounds incredibly ominous. It's a horrible word. The British have much more beautiful words for this. So foreclosure or, right? Sounds a lot better, right? Or we just restarted the business, or we had to, well, anyway, there's lots of beautiful words that smoothen the blow, but the essence is you go bankrupt. And that's no fun. And especially, again, how the fuck do you go through this, right? I've never done this before. You know, I was managing partner by then. The year before, we had all kinds of issues in our partner group. We didn't know exactly how to survive. We had very different ideas about how to survive this crisis. And there was a big split between the managing partner in 2008, 2009, and the rest of the partner group. And the partner group, and I was a little bit in between because I was part of the management team, but I was not the managing director. They asked me in the fall of 2009, can you help us to come through this crisis? I said, okay, I'll do what I can do, but we'll have to do this together. And of course we did. And we just needed a lot of luck, and we needed a lot of wisdom, and we needed really good help to get us through this period. But we managed. And fortunately, we still had a lot of business. We were still doing a few €100,000 of turnover every month. But we were also losing money. And it had to do with a big building that we couldn't get rid of quick enough. It had to do with lots of permanent contracts that we couldn't stop. It had to do with the bank that didn't want to help us further, etc. So there were all kinds of reasons. But the essence was there was just not enough work to keep everyone at work. So we had to slim down, and we had to slim down very drastically. So we relaunched the business. We moved to a new office. This is somewhere in that process. And we restarted with 20 people. And all 20 people we gave permanent contracts from day one. So not temporary contracts. Some of them had temporary contracts before. But we were so sure that we would manage in the new situation. We had done our homework. And in this process, we also had to get rid of half of our partner group. So we were 6 partners before the change, and we were 3 partners when we continued the business. And the first years were not easy because no bank wanted to give us any credit. So we had to manage our cash flow ourselves. And with 20 people and with big clients also, not easy, but we managed. And I got to tell about it, of course. This is from 2010. I dug up something that I vaguely remember, talking about it in design.nl, which was an online magazine back then. It doesn't exist anymore. And so we got a second chance. And in these processes, you learn a lot of things. And some of those things I want to share with you. Looking back and thinking back, one of the things that I really come to realize is that you have to mistrust your own routines. What works today, what has worked yesterday, there's no guarantee that it will work tomorrow. Whether you work on your own and you do the things you do, or whether you run a business like I did, everything that is a routine can be very comfortable, but it can also lull you to sleep. So be very aware of this and mistrust your routines. Cooperation doesn't mean consensus. This one was coined by my friend and partner Eric Spiekermann. And there's a lot of truth in this because we had to cooperate to get through this crisis in 2009, 2010. All the partners had to be aligned. But we didn't have consensus about the future. We also knew that we couldn't continue the way we did. We had to split up. We had to go from 6 partners and owners to 3 partners owners. How do you do that? I remember one of these long evening conversations at our dinner table at home. And my wife had cooked for all of us. We were 6 people around the table. And we discussed, okay, who has the guts, who has the money, who has the power and the will to continue this business, to restart and to build a new Edenspiekermann. And there was no consensus, but we knew we had to cooperate to make it happen. And last but not least, failure is part of the process. You have to be aware of the fact that there's failure in everybody's life. You will run into failures, bigger and smaller. And one of my gurus says this about that. We don't make mistakes, we have happy accidents. Now, don't you love that? Yeah, he's also somebody who can lull you to sleep, right? So, but yeah, we have happy. There's also, he used a color which is called Van Dijk brown. This is one of the other reasons why I love it. Bob Ross, of course. When we merged, when we became one company between the Netherlands and Germany, Eric helped us with some thoughts. And he said one of the ways we can set ourselves apart from competition is by explaining not so much what we do, but why we do the things we do. So the why. And he wrote a first draft of a manifesto, which then together with the whole group of partners internationally, we brought to these 7 points. You can read them on our website. You can find them there as well. There's a lot of good thinking and good ideas behind it. But what's important is the last one. Our resources are our most valuable assets. We cannot give them away for free. That's our people, and that's our creativity. And that should be the same for all of you. So never give away the essence of who you are, what you do. Don't give it away for free. The baker doesn't give his bread away for free, right? The cook doesn't cook for you for free, if it's a professional cook, if it's, when he runs a business. So one of the things that we decided on after our relaunch is we don't do unpaid pitches anymore. We just don't. And it's not easy, especially when you need work, right? Everyone knows this. You have to be very adamant about it. But we really believe that prevention is better than the cure. Because our analysis was one of the reasons why we didn't manage to survive, because it's the routines and all that stuff. But it's also because of every 5 pitches that we engaged in, we won 1. Which means that 80% of all the time and effort and creativity that is put into that by your best people, because usually on these pitches you put your best people, is wasted. It's just gone. And that's bad for business. It's bad for your existing clients because in the end they pay for it. But it's especially bad for the morale and the reason for being of your employees. Because it means that they do a lot of beautiful work that nobody will ever see, except a client who really doesn't care so much about it. Because otherwise he would do things differently, right? So what we have is a pitch code, and we share it with all potential clients that want to work with us and say, hey, we're doing a pitch. Do you want to engage with us? And we say, okay, but we don't do creative pitches. We avoid them whenever we can. Instead, we offer a strategic analysis and a creative debrief, which means in practice that the yellow part is for free. So of course the client brief, because that's what the client does, but more often than not we have to help our clients to write a really good brief. A lot of clients, when they first come to you, they have no clue what a brief really means, what it is. And we do the analysis and creative debrief. And that can have all kinds of forms and shapes. It depends very much on the size of the project, the kind of client, the industry the client is in, the kind of problem that he wants you to help solve. And then the meter starts running with the creative opening, proposal, etc. So sometimes we do this as well in a pitch, but then we want to be paid for that. So We want to meet the client team at the start of a pitch. This is part of our pitch code. We should be paid a realistic pitch fee. Now, what is realistic? Yeah, that depends on the size of the project, the amount of business that will come out of it, etc. But also the importance of the client in your portfolio. So this is something you have to think about, and you sometimes also have to negotiate. But if a client is not willing to pay anything, we say, okay, there's plenty of others who are probably willing to do this for free. Go work with them. Good luck. We want to have a written briefing, and we'll help our potential clients if they don't know exactly how to do that. But in essence, it should include these things. So how many agencies are invited? Sometimes clients don't even want to share that. I mean, why? Why not be honest and open about this, right? We want to know the timing for the entire project. We want to know the criteria for selecting the winner of the pitch. What are the criteria on the basis of which, right? Because more often than not, basically you can feel, sometimes you already know they have already chosen somebody. There's somebody they really want to work with, but the boss says they have to do this pitch, they blah, 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 you know, all that crap. And you go in, and when you're ignorant and when you're naive, before you know it, you've put in a lot of time and effort, and somebody else from day one already basically won the pitch. Didn't matter what they did, right? Sounds familiar? I see some nods, yes, unfortunately. And we also want to know who are the people who are in charge. And more important even, we want to be able to present our work to the people who decide. Now in the Netherlands, Great Britain, Germany, usually that's relatively easy. You will present to the people who decide. I have to come to feel and to see, especially for the government here, that pitches here are run in a different way. So you really have to ask. You have to be very clear. And if you're not allowed to present to the people who in the end will decide on your work, don't do it. Don't go there. Because it gets translated, it gets twisted. You have no control over how your work is being presented, in which context. The discussion about it is very important, especially because in a pitch, the work's not done yet. It's like a first step in a creative process that you engage in together with your client, right? So all these things are relevant in the essence of surviving as a creative, surviving as an agency. Because if you just go in there, do these things in a naive way and an ignorant way, not really realizing how things are run on client side, yeah, you'll lose. You'll lose a lot of money. You'll lose prestige. You'll lose the best employees. Whatever. You'll lose a lot, and in the end, you may lose your business. To wrap it up a little bit, some further thoughts to take home. What I'm doing today, the kind of work I'm engaged in today, is radically different from when I started in my profession in the 1980s. In the 1990s, I learned new things. I started working for websites, building websites. In 2000, I did my first big campaign with an advertising agency, going to a radio studio, a TV commercial, all that stuff. So never stop learning. The essence of our business and of being in the creative field is that everything changes. There's constant change. Basically, one of the main reasons why clients need us is because they face changes and they don't know how to solve these changes. So they need our help to go through those changes. So we have to be very agile, we have to be very nimble. But at the same time, I think, and this is just self-preservation, stick to an 8-hour workday. Don't work 10 hours, 11 hours, 12 hours a day. You will regret it after a while. When you're young, of course, you can do that. But when you're my age, in your mid-50s, I'm 54, stick to an 8-hour workday. You can do plenty in 8 hours every day, really. That's what we do as a team as well. Here at Edenspiekermann, we start at 10 o'clock and we finish at 6. And only very rarely, and I hope my team members who are all here, they can acknowledge this, we work beyond 8 o'clock at night. Very, very rarely. Only this week we had a lot of deadlines almost every day. There's lots of work that needed to be finished, and every day I think we managed to leave the office around 7:30 at the latest, right? Yeah. So it's not always easy, but it is possible. And then the next day you just start an hour later, right? Come in at 10:30 or 11, that's fine. But even when you stick to this, don't work too hard, too long hours. In the end, it has to do with productivity, right? And productivity is a very strange thing because working longer days, making more hours, doesn't mean you become more productive. On the contrary, you'll be a lot more productive when you are very focused and working for 6 hours a day, and then have 2 hours to have coffee, talk about the weekend, talk about the newborn baby of one of your colleagues, whatever. 6 hours a day for clients, paid work, and if you do that every day with the whole team, you can make a very, very profitable business, I can assure you. But even when you do that, you still have to recharge regularly. And everyone does that in their own way. What I do with my wife is we travel. We go to beautiful places, new cultures, meet other people. It's one of the reasons why I'm here today, because we had the feeling that we were, in a routine, that we really started to mistrust back in the Netherlands. Everything was fine. We had a beautiful house in the center of Amsterdam. The business was doing well again, and still we thought, okay, we need to kick ourselves in the butt and kick ourselves to the other side of the world. And basically that's what we did. We packed up, we left. I found another managing director for the company in the Netherlands, and I started completely anew here on my own, with no money, with no help from our colleagues from Europe. And that was tough, but for me it was also recharging. It was a way to rethink and to relive what's really important for me, and can I survive in a new environment, in a new context. Now, of course, everyone says, Singapore, that's Asia for dummies, right? Well, yes, but still. I'm happy that I can speak the language here, that I know English well enough to be able to do this presentation, for instance, but also to talk to clients and potential clients. It took me about half a year to understand what my employees really said. Yes, Singlish, and there's all kinds of levels of Singlish. We have one client right now, a girl on client side, and I know she speaks English, but it's... Anyway, so recharge. Recharge is really essential to do every now and then, and you do that in the way you like and what fits you. One of the things I do now is Tai Chi every week, 2 or 3 times a week, and that's for me a way to recharge. 1 hour in the morning or in the evening before I go to bed. But for me also travel. And traveling is wonderful as a creative person because you learn so much when you travel. When you go to other countries, meet other people, you really start to understand the world a little bit better. Why these Americans are doing the things they do, why they chose Trump. Go there, live there for a while. I've done that. I've lived in the heartland of the United States for a while. So I do understand where they're coming from. And unfortunately, they have no clue what's happening in this part of the world. They really have no clue because none of their newspapers, none of their television stations that they watch every day talks about what's happening here. They just don't. So, but that's their way of looking at the world. And of course, this is very generic because there's plenty of people who do take an interest and do care and do travel. And just traveling is one of my big sources of recharging and of inspiration. Certainly what we learned over that difficult period of our company's life in 2009, be resilient in all kinds of levels. But for a company, it just means that you have to be able to take responsibility for a person, for the future, any person, but especially for your employees, of course. And you have to ask yourself, can you take responsibility for yourself and for your own position in your company, with your peers, for the future? You have to be really honest. It's really difficult, but you have to be honest to people about what you think about them and about their future, especially when you run a business like I do. And you should never protect your employees from reality. Just like you don't protect your partner, your life partner, your spouse from reality. You know, when something horrible has happened in your life, you share it. You have to share it. You have to find a way to go through the emotions of what it really means for you. And usually you can only do that by engaging with somebody else, by reflecting on it. You learn a lot about your own thoughts and about your own, what's really important for you by just talking about it with a really good friend or your partner, and especially also with your business partners if it has to do with your business. Being resilient also means that cash is king, especially cash flow is king. Don't rely on banks. We know what happens, what can happen. And one of the reasons why we had to foreclose in 2010 was because we didn't have enough cash. So after that, that's one of the main things that we learned. A financially resilient company is a company that has cash, that just has cash in the bank. Don't pull it all out at the end of the year like we did, you know, and divide it among the partners as a dividend. Stupid. There will always be, after good times, there will come bad times. You know, what goes up must come down. We all know this. But sometimes you need a harsh reality to realize that it truly means that cash is king. And sometimes you have to reinvent yourself. I don't know whether coming to Singapore for me was a way to reinvent myself, but this illustrates this really nicely. This was a number of pages from a book that we made for one of our founders in the Netherlands, Jan Brinkman, who left, I think, in 2002. And we made a book, and we asked everyone in the company, all employees and partners, to visualize themselves in their desired identity. So what is your personal desired identity? Who would you like to be when you're not who you are today? So for instance, Frank Bloom, he wanted to be the naked chef, right? And Cindy, one of our copywriters, wanted to be the devil. Yeah, she was such a sweet girl, you know. So, and everybody thought she was a sweet girl, but deep inside she wanted to be the devil. And this guy, he just wanted to be a small boy with a guitar, right? This is one of our former partners. And the guitar theme, you know, that comes back. One of my other partners, Hans, he just wanted to be loved by a girl or just part of a Man Ray photograph or something like that. She just wanted to be invisible, I guess. And I wanted to be a tango dancer the rest of my life. And this was in 2002. It's not the same anymore today. If I would reinvent myself today, I would probably be a musician or something like that. But it would be a creative thing. And so that's what ties it all up. And thank you very much for your attention.
We will now be taking questions, if you have questions. Anyone? Okay, do you mind coming up on stage? Because we have a white mic. Yeah. Yes.
I'll leave you with a microphone. Thank you for sharing. I liked your tiger picture with the arrows. Do you still feel like that now?
No.
No.
Not anymore.
That's reassuring.
But it might happen again in 4 or 5 years from now. You never know.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Oh. All right.
I just wanted to know.
No question.
That was my question. Do you still feel like that now?
Okay, got it.
But I still feel the same way. No.
Okay.
No.
Do you think you think you're likely to then? Apparently that wasn't a good enough question.
Sorry? Run that by me again.
Do you think you'll come back to that place where you feel like you're being bombarded by arrows?
I may. So far it's been okay, but some clients here might throw a lot of arrows at you before they start trusting you,
Yeah.
right? So it's
Yes.
we'll
okay.
see.
Okay.
So far I've
Thank
been
you very
lucky,
much.
I guess, with my clients.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, please come up, sir. Yeah. No, we need this on video. Sorry. Yeah.
It has to be.
No, just the competition-wise, between yours and, let's say, Walter Wanda. Walter Lander did SRA and so on, and that is very much design outfit. What is your kind of interaction in the competition here in Singapore and beyond Singapore?
I think we're a very different company from Landor or from Design Bridge, for instance, who is also represented here in the room. We don't do packaging. We don't do we don't do FMCG kind of work. Not because we don't think that we can do it. Maybe we do think that, but it's for us the really interesting projects are those where there's a lot of complexity, there's a lot of information that needs to be structured and made readable and accessible for large groups of people. So that's the kind of projects that we typically love to do, and that can be large complex websites, it can be a wayfinding system for public transport, it can be all kinds of different things. But looking back, the projects that I really loved doing, and I'm still very proud to have been part of that, are the big challenges of, for instance, creating a new identity system for a city, like the city of Amsterdam. Or my colleagues in Berlin, they did the complete information architecture and system for the public transport in Berlin. Right? So those kinds of projects are the projects that last a long time, that are not gone in 1 or 2 years from now. They will typically last 10, 15, or 20 years. When I look at the tax forms in the Netherlands, everybody, millions of people have to fill out every year, some every month. They're still looking the way we designed them in the early 1990s. So that design has lasted for more than 20 years now, and I'm really proud of that. So those are the kinds of, and very often these are not the really sexy things. These are not the projects that you typically win prizes with, but we don't care. What we care about is solving huge problems. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're on this earth as designers, to help solve big problems. So far, we've not been able to tackle really big problems here in Singapore yet, maybe because there are not really that many big problems. When you come from the outside and you go into Singapore, you think, wow, shit, they have things sorted here, right? But when you live here like 2.5, 3 years, like I do now, then you see the little cracks in the pavement, then you see things with the MRT that are not running so smoothly, etc., right? You all have these experiences in your daily commutes. So there's still a lot of work to be done. And I'm hoping in a few years from now, when we're big enough, when we build up trust and a reputation here, etc., we're very hard working at that the government will engage us to help them solve these kinds of problems. That's what I'm hoping for.
I guess we have one more final question, if anyone wants to ask that. Anyone? No? Okay. Oh, would you mind coming up? Sorry. White mics. Yeah.
Hi, Edo.
Good morning. Hello.
Earlier you were talking about 3 different things about mistrusting routine, that failure is okay. But the third one is something that I cannot move on, and I want to clarify. You said about cooperation is not equal to consensus. And I want to know that, like, if you can share some details about it and what exactly you did when you encountered the situation, because I know it's kind of a reality in a workplace. And now that you've encountered this before, how are you approaching it? Like, how do you address it now or in the future? Thank you.
Yeah, it's a really good point. It's I would say it would be great if you can move forward in whatever situation that you encounter in life when you're in full consensus with another. But people are different, and people have different value systems, have different reasons why they're very passionate about something and not at all passionate about something else. And other people have completely the opposite, right? So, but you still, if you want to solve big problems, if you want to change things, bigger things, things that are bigger than you, yourself, and maybe your family, you have to collaborate. I love collaboration, that's why I'm in a business and I don't work on my own. I thrive as an individual because of collaboration, because of what other people around me can teach me. I'm trying to learn every day from the people around me as well. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you always have to have consensus to move forward. Sometimes, especially in a large company like ours with a lot of partners, you will never reach that consensus, complete consensus, that you know exactly how you want to move forward. So then you still have to collaborate, but you also have to accept leadership from others. Even in a partner group where everyone is shareholder, and for a long time we were equal shareholders in the Netherlands. We all had the same amount of shares. We were 6 partners, we were even 10 partners. At a certain point in the last phase we were just 3 partners. Now 3 is a lot easier to collaborate and to find consensus because there's always 2 against 1 if it's right. But when you're 6 partners it can be 3 against 3. So what do you do then? So you have to talk, you have to discuss, you have to collaborate, and in the end you have to accept based on arguments and based on, just you have to make a choice. Being an entrepreneur means making choices, and sometimes these choices might not be exactly what you want, so there's no consensus, but you know in order to move forward you have to make a choice. So sometimes it's just better not to push your own opinion and to say, okay, I guess you have good reasons why you want us to go that way. Let's do that. But let's try it for a half a year or a year, see if it works. If it works, I'm perfectly fine with it. If it doesn't work, we'll do it my way, right? And I guess that's also the way Singapore has been run for a long period of time, and will probably also be run in the coming years. We don't see and hear a lot of it. Sometimes things come to the surface, right? Like what's happening right now in the family. We know that there's no consensus there, but we also know that they can only move forward when they collaborate. So that's what Lee Hsien Loong is now trying to do, to collaborate with his people, with his family, to find a way out of this crisis. So we'll see how that pans out. But how I do that today, for me it's now easy because I'm the boss, right? And I don't have equal partners that I have to, I just have my wife who's helping us finance the business here. We have to talk about these things. She has to agree with investments that I do, with choices that I make. And sometimes we don't agree about these things. But that's relatively easy because she trusts me. But when you're in a situation with a number of partners, business partners, sometimes it might be quite difficult. And I think that's the essence of what it means. You have to collaborate, you have to, if you want to move ahead together, you have to do that in a collaborative manner, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you always must have consensus.
Thank you. I have a calligraphy work of our manifesto. Would you mind helping me pick one of the audience members who ask you the question so that we can give it to them?
Okay.
Yeah.
So
there were 3 people who asked earlier. Did you remember?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I should have briefed you earlier.
I didn't know. So I want to give to you.
Oh, could I get just one of them is like for you, and one of them is for her. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Edo, thank you for showing vulnerability. Thank you for sharing your stories with us this morning. Can we please give him a round of applause?